I used to think that having my own apartment would feel like stepping into sunlight after years in the shade, warm, bright, and entirely my own. For the first few days, it was exactly that. I unpacked slowly, letting each object find its place. My thrifted couch, with its mismatched cushions, became the heart of my tiny living room. I bought a ridiculous amount of candles just because I could. I walked barefoot on the wood floors and listened to the quiet like it was music. For the first time in my life, the silence belonged to me. The walls didn't hold anyone's disappointment. The rooms didn't echo with judgment. I could breathe. And then my parents let themselves in. They still had a copy of the key, one I had given them for a single delivery day. I asked for it back multiple times after that, but each request was met with a breezy, "We'll get around to it." I should have pushed harder. I should have known better. But part of me wanted to believe that having a place of my own meant they would finally treat me like an adult. That hope died the first time I came home to find my pantry rearranged by food group, my mail opened, and a handwritten note taped to the fridge. "You really need more protein in your diet. Red Heart Mom." I stared at the note for a long time, anger simmering beneath my skin. They had been inside my home. My food, my mail, my privacy, sorted, opened, judged. But when I confronted them, they smiled like they'd done me a favor. "Oh, sweetheart, we were only helping," my mother insisted. My father added, "If you locked your door properly, we wouldn't worry." I tried to explain that worry didn't give them the right to invade my life, but they dismissed it. To them, boundaries were suggestions. Optional. Negotiable. Silly. The second break-in happened on a Saturday morning. I stepped out of the shower, hair dripping, towel wrapped around me, and heard voices. My parents' voices. In my living room. My heart lurched. I thought someone had broken in. Technically, someone had. They both turned when I appeared in the doorway, pale and shocked. "Oh, honey, we didn't think you'd be home," my mom said, waving it off as if that made it better. I stood there, wet and shivering, while they told me they'd just stopped by to check on me. I asked them to leave. They acted confused, almost offended. As if I were the unreasonable one. After that day, their visits became more frequent, and more intrusive. I'd come home to find my furniture moved, my bedroom window unlocked for better airflow, my laundry mysteriously washed and folded. They walked through my apartment like they owned it, their footsteps filling the spaces that were supposed to be safe. Every time I argued, they called me dramatic. Ungrateful. Emotional. But it wasn't drama. It was desperation. I wanted a home where I could breathe without someone rearranging the air. Where my drawers stayed shut unless I opened them. Where my life remained untouched unless I invited someone in. The keys they never returned became the first cracks in the fragile peace I had built for myself. And I didn't yet know it, but those cracks were about to shatter everything. The night they entered while I slept carved a line in my life, before and after, innocence and understanding, daughter and stranger. Even now, when I think about it, I can still feel the cold rush of fear climbing my spine like a warning I didn't yet know how to obey. It was nearly 6 a.m. when the sound woke me, the soft metallic scrape of something being adjusted. I opened my eyes to find my father standing above my bed, leveling a picture frame with the concentration of a man performing delicate surgery. My mother hovered in the hallway, arms crossed as she surveyed my room like a critic examining a stage set. I screamed. Instinct, pure and sharp. They jumped, startled not by their actions but by my reaction. "Why on earth are you yelling?" my mother demanded, pressing a hand to her chest. "Why are you in my bedroom?" I shot back, clutching my blanket like armor. My father shrugged, as though the answer were obvious. "The front door was unlocked. And your frame was crooked. So you came inside my home, into my bedroom, while I was asleep?" He sighed. "You should lock your door if you don't want people walking in." "My bedroom door?" I repeated, voice cracking. I shouldn't have to lock a door inside my own apartment to keep my parents out. They exchanged a look, the kind that always meant I was being unreasonable. Then, without another word, they finished tidying and left, as if they hadn't just violated the most intimate boundary a person can have. That day, I called out of work. My hands shook when I tried to make coffee. My chest felt tight, like the walls had closed in on me. I walked through my apartment touching surfaces, trying to reclaim them, but every corner felt contaminated by their intrusion. And the memories began to resurface. The time my mother read my diary to make sure you weren't hiding anything dangerous. The summer my father went through my phone because privacy is for adults, not children. The countless moments they changed parts of my life without asking, friends, hobbies, clothes, even decisions about school. Their excuse was always the same. We're protecting you. But protection without respect is just control dressed up in concern. I tried again to confront them. I spoke calmly, carefully, choosing each word like stepping stones across a river. You can't come into my home without my permission. You can't enter my bedroom. You can't touch my things. My mother blinked at me, surprised. We're your parents. Why are you acting like we're strangers? Because you treat me like I'm your property, I whispered. Her face hardened. My father shook his head. You're being dramatic. They left soon after, offended, indignant, as if I had hurt them. As if my boundaries were an inconvenience, not a right. I thought it couldn't get worse. I thought that if I kept insisting, they'd eventually understand. I was wrong. A week later, I came home to find the wooden keepsake box from under my bed laid open on my desk. Everything inside, letters, memories, small fragments of a life I had kept private, spread out like evidence in an interrogation. My heart sank. My breath vanished. They hadn't just crossed a boundary. They had stomped on it, dismantled it, and laughed about it on the way out. My mother's explanation was simple. If you're hiding things, then you must be doing something wrong. That was the moment something in me broke, not loudly, but cleanly. Not with rage, but with clarity. They would never change. Boundaries were foreign to them. Respect was optional. Privacy was a threat. And if I stayed, I would lose myself piece by piece. So I began to plan my escape, not with anger, but with silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than any argument ever could. People always imagine endings as loud things, doors slamming, voices raised, dramatic lines delivered with trembling hands. But mine wasn't loud. It wasn't even bittersweet. It was quiet in the way of a deep breath after years of holding it in. Once I decided to leave, the plan unfolded with the calmness of inevitability. I found a new apartment across the city, small, sunlit, and tucked above a bakery that opened at dawn and filled the street with the smell of warm bread. The moment I walked into the empty space, I knew. The air felt untouched. Safe. Mine. I signed the lease the same day. But I told no one. I couldn't risk a conversation, an argument, a guilt trip that would make me hesitate. My parents didn't believe in boundaries, they certainly wouldn't believe in my right to vanish from their reach. So I moved in silence. Each evening after work, I carried one box to my car. Clothes, books, photographs, pieces of myself I refused to leave behind in a place where they had been contaminated by intrusion. I moved slowly, one carload at a time, letting the transition feel real in small, manageable breaths. My parents thought I was working late. They texted occasionally, and I responded briefly. Nothing beyond what a normal adult might say. I maintained the illusion because it was safer that way, for my peace, for my plan, for the fragile courage I was building. The old apartment grew emptier each day. The new one grew fuller, warmer, more mine. The final night, I stood in the near-bare living room of the old place. My footsteps echoed. The space felt like a cast-off skin, something I had once lived in but no longer belonged to. I thought about every moment of suffocation within those walls, stepping out of the shower to find them in my home, discovering my keepsake box violated, hearing their voices in my space when I wasn't expecting anyone. The air felt heavy with memories I no longer needed. On the kitchen counter, I placed the spare key they had refused to return. I didn't leave a note. Notes were explanations, and explanations were invitations to argue. I didn't owe another argument. I didn't owe them understanding wrapped in softness. Silence would say what words never could. I turned off the lights, closed the door, and walked away. I slept in my new apartment that night for the first time. The quiet felt different, not tense, not watchful, not full of possibility of someone walking in. It felt like a blanket around my shoulders. I breathed easier, deeper. I slept without waking even once. Peace was a revelation. For 2 blissful days, they didn't know. I existed in a pocket of calm where no one could reach me. I ate breakfast without worrying about footsteps. I napped without locking a door. I laughed to myself for no reason except that freedom felt absurd and beautiful in equal measure. On the 3rd day, my phone exploded. First, call us. Why is your apartment empty? Then, are you okay? What is this? Where did you go? Then anger. This isn't funny. We deserve an explanation. Then fear. Please. Just let us know you're alive. But I didn't respond. For the first time in my life, my silence was not fear, it was power. A soft, steady power that wrapped around me like armor. They could panic. They could wonder. They could sit in the discomfort they had created. Because this time, the consequences were theirs to bear. And I, finally, was free. Weeks passed. Days blurred into each other, filled with the quiet hum of my own life. My new apartment became a sanctuary of small rituals: morning coffee by the window, the way sunlight hit the floor in the late afternoon, the sound of my own footsteps echoing against walls that no one else had touched. And yet, in the back of my mind, I felt it, the slow, simmering panic that I had unleashed on the people who had always believed they owned me. My parents' silence, which had been their tool of control for years, was now broken. They had no access. No key. No excuse. Only the echo of the space I left behind. It started with calls, which I ignored. Then texts, which I left unread. Then voicemails. Their panic grew desperate, almost fragile. My mother's voice trembled with worry. My father's words cracked with fear. Every message was filled with the echoes of the boundaries they had refused to respect, now turned back on themselves. And still, I remained silent. It was not cruelty. It was not revenge born of malice. It was the purest form of teaching, the kind that words could never deliver, that actions have consequences, and that the people who refuse to see boundaries will eventually encounter them, whether they like it or not. Then came the first email. Not a demand. Not a plea. Not a lecture. Just words, trembling and hesitant, spilling from 2 hearts realizing the weight of years spent overstepping mine. They apologized, not perfectly, not eloquently, not with full understanding, but sincerely. "We are so sorry for not seeing you," my mother wrote. "We thought we were helping. We thought we knew better. But we see now, we didn't respect you. We didn't respect your space. We didn't respect your life." My father added, "We realize now that love without respect isn't love, it's control. We want to do better, but we also understand if you need distance. We just want you safe, happy, and heard." I read the emails twice, letting each sentence sink in. There was no rush to reply. No guilt. No obligation. Only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that my silence, the thing they had tried to ignore, dismiss, and break, had finally been heard. In my new apartment, I walked from room to room and touched surfaces with deliberate care. Everything felt mine. The light reflected off my kitchen counters without judgment. My bedroom was a haven, untouched for me and me alone. I realized then that my revenge had never been about hurting them. It had been about reclaiming what was mine. Peace. Choice. Safety. The right to exist without interference, without invasion, without control disguised as care. Healing would take time, for all of us. I would decide if, when, and how to let them back into my life. For now, my peace was enough. For now, I had learned that boundaries are not suggestions, that silence is not weakness, and that the greatest revenge, the sweetest revenge, is the one that allows you to live fully, without fear. I smiled as I poured myself a cup of tea. The sun caught the rim of the cup and fractured across the floor in golden shards. The silence around me was soft, warm, and alive. I had chosen myself. I had walked away. And for the first time in years, I was home.